Welcome to the Revit API using C Sharp, beginner's guide to changing and duplicating wall types. So I have a brand new class here, and the first thing I want to do is generate a new method that isn't returning anything. So I'll send in a void, and I'll call it change wall type, and I'll send in the current document which I'm working with. The first thing I want to do is get the list of all the walls that I have in my project, and I'll just change them all. So I'll return a list of all the current walls which I got in my project, and I'll send in the document which I'm working with into this method. I'll go ahead and call it get walls, and I'll use a filter element collector to get everything in the project, and then I'll use the collector of class of type wall, and then I'll send it to an element, to an iCollection list of elements. So here I want to get the actual walls themselves. So I'll get a list of walls, and I'll call it list walls here, and it'll be an empty list at the moment. So it's a brand new list of walls. So I'll go ahead and iterate over my iCollection of elements. So for each one of the walls in my iCollection, I'll go ahead and add it and return it back to myself. For those of you that aren't familiar with filter element collectors, I suggest watching a previous video that I made for filter element collectors. So here I just use my method and return all the walls to myself. What I want to do is get a wall type, and at the moment it'll be empty. So I'll just go ahead and send it to null. For each one of the walls in the list, I'm going to iterate and I'm going to change the size. So what I'll do is do a try and a catch block. That way, if it fails, it doesn't give me an awful error message. It just kind of fails more elegantly. So here, what I'm going to do is use the filter element collector and send in the document and of class, and the type of, and I want a wall type. So I'm looking for the wall type. So I'm going to look for the very first instance of the wall type element. And this is a lambda expression. So what I'm doing is I'm sending in the x, and the x is now the wall type. The wall type name should equal shear wall 36 inches, and I'm going to send it back and cast it as a wall. This looks a little bit intimidating, but once you write a couple of these, they're very, very quick and easy to use. So here, what I'll do is if the wall type is not null, and meaning that the type is found in my project, what I want to do is start a new transaction. So I found the wall type 36 in my project, and the transaction here will start. So I'll go ahead and say the t.start, and then I'll go ahead and from the wall that I'm iterating over, I'll get its type, and then I'm going to send the type which I was searching for inside my project and assign it to the wall which I'm iterating over for. So for each one of the walls, it's going to look for the first instance of the type and then assign that type to my wall. So here I'll get a simple project just with some walls. Here this is an 18-inch SW, we call it for shear walls. And what will happen here is I'll go ahead and look for my, my button here, and then it'll iterate over each one of these walls and assign the 36-inch wall type to it. So here's what happens if the wall type isn't found, and I found this more common than not. If somebody looks for a wall type that isn't in your project, what you need to do is you actually need to create a new wall type. So what we'll do is we'll create a new method and we'll send out a new wall type. So here we'll say create new wall type, and we'll send in the document that we're working with and the wall that we are working with. So the first thing that I want to do here is from the wall that I casted in or sent in, I'm going to get the wall type, because I'm going to try to duplicate it as you would in the Revit model. So here I'll create the new wall type and I'll send it to null. So the very first thing I want to do is send in a transaction, because I'm going to do something in the Revit API or in Revit, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the wall. So I'm going to start my transaction, and I'll put it in a try catch block. That way, if it fails, it won't fail so bad. And here I'll get the new wall. So from the wall type, I'm going to actually duplicate my wall and send it the new name. So I'll call it shear wall 48, and I'll send it back as a wall type. I'll look for it so it fails there. So when it's looking for a 48-inch type wall, it won't actually be able to find it because it's not in my project. So here it'll fail. And here I'll duplicate it, creating a new one. But then I got to set all the parameters here. So the first thing I want to do is compound structures. From the new wall type, I want to get the compound structure. And then in the structure itself, it can have multi-layers. So what I want to do is I want to get the first index of the compound structure. So I'll get the first core layer index, and I'll just send it as a number. That way I can iterate over the numbers. And then I get a list of compound structure layers, and the compound structure layer, I'll get the compound structure and I'll get the layers. So I'll get all of the layers that are involved in the making of the wall. So here I want to iterate over each one of the layers. So here I will look for the compound layer to string, and what I'm looking for is the function of it to be structure. So what I want is that structural component of the layer in order to set its width. So here I'll do, once it finds the actual structure component of it, I'll go ahead and set the width, and that I'll give it the index number of which one I'm looking for. And I usually do, so we're looking for a shear wall 48, but the Revit API is written in feet, so I'll just go ahead and divide it by 12. That way it's in feet, and it gets 4 feet, and then I'll iterate over each one of them so I get it. Once I've got it, I can now set the compound structure to the compound structure that I created, setting my new wall to be a 48-inch wall, or a 4-foot wall, and then sending the new wall type back to myself. So if I was not able to find it, so if the wall type equals null, I will send the new wall type to be a new wall type here, and use my new method, sending the new document plus the wall which I've iterated over to duplicate. And here I'll start a brand new transaction. I'll go ahead and send document, and what I'm doing is I'm setting a new wall type, which I'm from a duplication. So here I'll do a start, and then the wall that I've iterated over, which is the wall type, will equal the new wall type that I've just generated, and send it in to the type. And I'll go ahead and commit that way that the Revit API knows I'm done. Here I've missed this little colon there. I think that's about it. Here we'll go ahead and run it for debugging and start it. And I'll go ahead and get that same wall project. Look at the 3D here. And if I edit the type here, there's no 48-inch shear wall. And what I'm looking for is that structure number 1 layer there to set. So I'll go ahead and look for my API button, and I'll go ahead and just run it. And it'll change all these walls to 48-inch, create my new type. There's my layer, and set to 48 inches. And it's duplicating, so all the parameters and all the settings have been just kind of casted into this new type. Anyways, thank you for watching, and for more Revit API videos, please subscribe.